Good evening from the Qtv Newsroom. I am Maria Masani and thanks for joining us. First, to main local, international and sports news headlines. Following the short Christmas break, President Barrow met the people tour resumes with stops in Foni. Solo Sandeng's daughter tells the TRRC the family has still not been able to bury her father following his arrest, torture and killing in 2016. We also hear from UDP supporters about their treatment following their participation in a protest march about the killing of Solo Sandeng. The Republic of Turkey makes a donation to the Gambia Armed Forces. In international news, we hear how journalists are being killed with impunity around the world in the course of doing their work. In sports news, in an extended special report, we hear why fans of female football in Africa have made much to look forward to. Now the local news in detail. Stay with us. The president on Monday resumed his constitutionally mandated dialogue with the People's Tour after a Christmas break in Foni, where he called on the people of Foni to embrace and support his government for the development of the country. He promised them more developments. Alucise reports.
Speaking at mega rallies in Sintit in Foni Jarol and Bambara in Foni Bondali, President Barrow, in a rather reconciliatory statement, urged the people of Foni to rally behind his government to help develop the country. His government, he added, sees Foni equal as any other region in the country, as he expressed delight at the warm welcome accorded him. The Gambia struggled, he told the people of Foni, is over, as Gambians now enjoy their fundamental human rights, such as the right to freedom of expression and press freedom.
Fala Foni naɓe Gambia naɓe fof
alafta Foni goɗo Gambia goɗo
enen fof gonen hunde wotere
ɓeege kukelente
ngenen fof ngeɗen gandiya goto
ɓeege gandi kelente
liggoɗen ndi leydi
ɓe naɓa goto.
On women's issues, he pledges to empower Gambian women, citing that for the first time, a specific ministry for women and children is created by his government. The enactment of the Women's Enterprise Fund, he said, is meant to provide financial support to women's group to empower the women. On the appeals for a skills center, President Barrow informed the meetings that a technical school is being built at Foni Damban to provide skill training to the youth of Foni. On electricity, he shared with them plans to provide universal access to electricity by 2025. The president used the meetings to extend condolences to the families of the 5 people who died in a car accident in Foni. At the Sintet meeting, there was an appeal for additional power tillers and milling machines to support the women. On electricity, they informed the president that only 3 communities have electricity out of the over 10 villages in Foni Jarol. They re-echoed challenges raised at last year's meeting in Kampasa during a similar tour. Among them is the inadequate health personnel and functional ambulances at the Sintet Community Health Post and the Child Fund Back Kampasa Health Post. On communication, the GSM operators are urged to improve their networks in Foni Jarol. The state of road networks in Foni Jarol are also in a deplorable state and require serious work to enhance socio-economic development. Responding to the health-related issues, Dr. Ahmad Lamin Samate, the health minister, said his ministry is working on addressing their concerns soon. Regarding the Kampasa Health Post, he said there was a plan to take over the health post, but Child Fund is not ready to hand over the facility as he promised to continue engaging them. Minister Samate also disclosed plans to construct a health center in Foni Jarol to complement the Buyam General Hospital that has registered major transformation. Ami Fabre, the Minister of Agriculture, said the government recognizes the importance of agriculture, hence the donation of power tillers, milling machines and seeds to farmers in the past. She reveals that the government also intends to construct cold storage facilities in addition to improve women's gardens across the country. At the Bambara meeting in Foni Bondali, while pledging their support to the president, the people narrate the challenges they face using the Bambara road, especially during the rainy season. Just as at Sintet, the people of Foni Bondali are also in need of electricity and water. In addition, they also complain of the lack of an accessible health facility in Foni Bambara and surrounding communities. Tourism Minister and Lands Minister Hamad Nkeba and Musa Drame said the government is committed to its social contract with Gambians while advocating support for the president and government. There was a presentation of milling machines to the communities of Kamwali, Kalang and Nyantempo from the Environment Minister for preserving their forest. Reporting for QTV News, I am Aliou Cisse.
The daughter of the late Solo Sandeng, Fatoumata Sandeng Dabo, on Tuesday appeared before the Truth Commission to narrate her ordeal and the death of her father at the hands of the NIA under the former regime, as well as her life in exile. Babukar C reports.
Fatoumata Sandeng began her testimony with a background information of her father and the work he had been doing as a political activist before his death in 2016. Sandeng said her father informed her of a planned protest that he had organized and told her not to return home after work until he is sure that things are safe. The witness said her father informed her to take care of the family in case anything happened to him. The witness said on 14th April 2016, the day of the protest, she went to work and later saw people running from Sarakunda heading to Tipa Garage, Bakote. She said it was the following morning that news started coming in that her father was tortured to death. The witness said this was later confirmed to them by Ousainou Dabo, the leader of the UDP, who later went out with other UDP supporters marching in the streets to demand Solo Sandeng's release, death or alive. The witness said the paramilitaries came in trucks and arrested the protesters while some ran away. She said they ran home only for the military to come for them at their house.
A young man ran coming to us and told us that soldiers were coming. So that's how we were all packed out of the compound and then taken to the neighboring compound.
Fatoumata Sandeng said they later ran and sought refuge at the Senegalese embassy but were denied entry and decided to stay in Sanchaba for a week before they flew to Senegal, where they spent 9 months.
So it was very hard for the family to settle. And for the school-going kids, my younger brothers, they wouldn't be able to go to school. But we later registered them at the Franco-Arabic school in Senegal.
The witness said the family finally confirmed their father's death in June of 2016.
Sheikh Omar Jeng, who was representing the state at the time, confirmed that Solo Sandeng had died in custody. From respiratory failure, where I also read Nogonjai's testimony. As to how she was tortured and how she saw my dad. She described things as she saw them. And this broke my heart.
The witness said they came back to the Gambia after Jammeh's defeat in the 2016 presidential elections. She said she signed the documents for her father's body to be exhumed, but stressed that it's still disheartening to know that her father's remains are still at the hospital's mortuary and they have not been able to afford him a fitting burial. Babukar C, QTV News.
In other evidence to the TRRC, 2 UDP supporters appeared on Tuesday to narrate their respective ordeals at the hands of the National Intelligence Agency. The 2 witnesses were among dozens of the UDP supporters who were arrested in April 16th of 2016 following the alleged torture and killing of Solo Sandeng. Babukar C reports.
The 2 witnesses said they were among members of the UDP arrested on the 16th of April 2016 when the leader of the United Democratic Party, lawyer Ousainou Dabo, led dozens of people to protest for the release of Solo Sandeng, who at the time was said to have been arrested and tortured to death. Ismaila Cisse and Yaya Jammeh said they were informed of a gathering happening at lawyer Dabo's compound where he joined them. The gathering was told a press conference had been organized by their party leader and they were going to embark on a protest march from traffic lights towards Westfield before paramilitaries came in full force to arrest them.
So no compromise.
So when the second troop also approached, at that time there was no compromise.
So
when they alighted from their vehicle in a rush, they fell upon people, beating people. In fact, some of them were firing in the air, and they were bundling people and throwing them inside their trucks.
Both witnesses said they were taken to the PIU headquarters in Kanifing before being driven to Mile 2 Central Prison. They said they were later taken to the High Court and sentenced to 3 years in jail Ismaila Cisse said his incarceration in Mile 2 caused him a lot of troubles.
Nying membenda kona problemo soto Mile 2 netena man nying problemo soto nying problemo di tan na Mile 2 ne wo botana Mile 2 ngano ma witin center fokana jang ndata banjunu ye nying be bondinda kono hanisa nying man poseno.
The problem I encountered at Mile 2 was about my teeth, because when I was going there, when I went there, I got this toothache at Mile 2, and it became serious at Mile 2. So when I was released, they took all my tooth out from my mouth, but up to date, nothing has been placed back.
For Yaya Jammeh, his family suffered in his absence, including his children's education.
High school.
Yes, about the family, they didn't have any problems except that my son's schooling stopped, because 8 months he was unable to go to school.
Both witnesses said they were released following the change of government in 2016. Babu Karsi, QTV News.
We will take a short break, and still to come we have local, international and sports news. The Republic of Turkey, through its embassy in the Gambia, on Tuesday donated military equipment and accessories to the Gambia Armed Forces at the defense headquarters in Banjul. Omar Pijala attended the ceremony, and he now reports.
The donated items, which is meant to strengthen the Gambia security sector, include military uniforms, jackets, belts, and ammunition vests. Receiving the items, the Chief of Defense Staff of the Gambia Armed Forces, Yakuba A. Drame, said the donation is a testimony of the long-standing relations between the two countries and expressed gratitude to the people and government of the Republic of Turkey. He said the items will ensure that GAF are fully equipped and enhance their capacity and the security reform efforts.
The Republic of Turkey, they've been generous enough to the armed forces in the context of logistic assistance, in the context of training needs of the armed forces, of course, both military and civil in nature, and other related forms of assistance. Today, most officers in the armed forces, they've benefited immensely from the respective military institutions in Turkey to pursue the different level of educations, to be more precise, professional educations in those fine institutions that you can equate anywhere in the world.
CDS Drame also revealed future cooperation plans between the armies of the two countries.
Of recent, we've received once again that exceptional generosity from the Turkish armed forces to say they are more than willing to airlift 500 men and women from this fine institution, the armed forces, to go to Turkey to train them on specialized operations. That's quite commendable. Imagine not saying we would train 1 or 2, but saying we would train 500 in 2 batches of 250 each, and they would undertake the responsibility to airlift them from Gambia to the shores of Turkey to undertake meaningful training, more so in the context of peace support operations.
The Republic of Turkey's ambassador to the Gambia, Tolga Bermek, said this assistance is not peculiar to the Gambia Armed Forces, but to other sectors as part of their support to the Gambia government's development agenda. He said that the gesture demonstrates the cordial relations between the two countries, dating back to independence, and has continued to grow and witness development in all spheres.
Equipment will contribute to enhancing the operational capabilities and effectiveness of the Gambian armed forces and their future achievements in UN peacekeeping operations in the future.
The Gambia is in a political transition and the security sector is being reformed. According to officials, over 7,500 Gambian soldiers have been trained by the Turkey military both in the country and in Turkey. Reporting for QTV News, I am Omar P. Jallo.
We will take another commercial break and the news continues with international and sports news. Welcome back. If you're just tuning in, this is QTV News. In international news, nearly a decade after the UN designated November 2nd as the International Day to End Impunity for Crimes Against Journalists, journalists are no safer as crimes against them are still widespread and rising. According to media advocacy groups, here is a special report by Mourou Mboj.
Around the world, journalists continue to lose their lives, and in a very high percentage of incidents, their killers go unpunished. Two recently published surveys by respectable media watchdogs reveal a stark picture of murders, torture, kidnappings and disappearances against journalists, making the profession of journalism one of the riskiest in the world. The New York-based media watchdog Committee to Protect Journalists, the CPJ, in its 2020 Global Impunity Index, found that during the 10-year index period ending August 31, 2020, 277 journalists were murdered for their work worldwide, and in 83% of those cases, no perpetrators have been successfully prosecuted. Somalia, Syria, Iraq and South Sudan occupy the worst 4 spots on the offenders list, in that order, as war and political instability perpetuate the cycle of violence and lawlessness. Mexico tops the table as the deadliest country for journalists, followed by Iraq, Afghanistan, India and Pakistan. At least 8 people have died this year in Mexico, and 26 murders have been unsolved in this 10-year index period, and 30 for the previous index. Corruption, weak institutions and lack of political will account for the impunity, according to the report. Reporters Without Borders also published its 2020 index, largely confirming the findings of the CPJ. The report says 50 journalists worldwide have lost their lives on the job this year. The number of journalists who died reporting on armed conflict or terror attacks have dropped, but victims of targeted killings have been rising. 40 of the 50 victims this year were targeted killings. In Africa, the deadliest country, unsurprisingly, is Somalia. Half of the 102 journalists killed in the continent over the past 10 years were killed in Somalia. Eritrea and Djibouti have the largest number of journalists in prison in the whole of sub-Saharan Africa. And with Eritrea, according to the report, 11 media workers are behind bars from whom nothing has been heard for many years. In Rwanda, the crackdown on dissident voices has been so severe that self-censorship is now the rule. In Ghana, an investigation into the murder of the investigative journalist Ahmed Hussein Swali in January last year failed to identify those responsible. Similarly, in Nigeria, those behind the killing of 2 journalists shot dead 6 months apart while covering protests are still on the loose. The Gambia, according to the report, is among a few countries who, having recently emerged from a dictatorship, have loosened the noose on journalists. But even here, no one has been prosecuted for the deaths of the journalists Chief Ibrahim Mane and Omar Barrow. Reporters Without Borders also noted that hundreds of journalists lost their lives this year due to COVID-19. Some of these deaths were linked to their reporting assignments. 3 such cases in Russia, Egypt and Saudi Arabia were of journalists arrested in connection with their work and later died of COVID-19, having been denied access to medical care. Attacks on journalists around the world take many forms, some of which are sanctioned in law. Legal or quasi-legal mechanisms include the use of civil or criminal legal actions, covert surveillance, overt censorship and financial threats, such as withdrawing state advertising, as well as more direct intimidation and threats. Yet, we are constantly reminded that media freedom and democracy are intrinsically linked. A democratic state cannot survive without a vibrant and independent media. A free press can of course be both good and bad, but a press that is not free can never be anything but bad, in which case democracy loses. For QTV News, I am Mumudumboch.
And now some sports news. Despite COVID-19 interruptions, sport has not stopped completely, which is why female football enthusiasts in Africa have welcomed FIFA's decision to create a female football development department, describing it as a turning point in the fight to sustain female football on the continent. In this in-depth report, QTV's Ansumana Esonyasi takes a closer look at some of the challenges confronting the growth of female football in Africa and what is being done to change it.
Despite being seen as a male participant sport by many, women have long held leadership and support roles within African football. Sports like track and field, netball, basketball, handball and other sports were popular with women, as the masculine nature of football proved a deterrent to women's involvement in football in Africa. And in spite of recent successes, religious, cultural and social challenges continue to thwart the advancement of women's football in most parts of the continent. The biggest problem facing the women's game on the continent remains religious disapproval, as in the case of Somaliland, where a women's tournament was called off 2 weeks ago following threats and complaints from religious leaders. Another problem is the little or no interest shown from some FIFA and CAF member states to provide sufficient resources for the women's game. This would be true with countries like Burundi and Madagascar, whose senior national sides are yet to play a FIFA-sanctioned match. In such cases, greater efforts seem channeled to getting the men's teams to qualify. Another factor would be administrative, as the women's game is still not as organized as male football. Also, the fact that international competitions are held biannually remains a challenge, as teams remain inactive for the most part. Unlimited access to education, poverty amongst women, inequalities and human rights abuses targeting women, and the retention of football players is also another challenge. Funding too is an issue impacting the game in Africa, where most financial assistance comes from FIFA and not national football associations. Attitudes about this sort of disparity are beginning to change elsewhere in Africa. In America, for example, the women's team have been much more successful than their male counterparts. The women have won the World Cup 4 times and been crowned Olympic champions 4 times. The African continent's position on the Women Global Ranking, introduced by FIFA in 2003, clearly reflects the state of women football in Africa, hence the inability of any African women's team to make it to the top 30 of the current FIFA World Ranking. However, in spite of all these challenges, the female game is gaining popularity across the continent. Here in the Gambia, female football was introduced in the early 1990s, but it was not until in 2012 that the country had its first FIFA-recognized female youth national team, which participated in the FIFA Under-17 World Cup in Azerbaijan, where they bowed out at the group stages. The national female leagues are also gaining popularity, with some players making important career transfers over the years to Senegal, Nigeria and Liberia. Like in other countries, the challenges here are similar. However, there are promising signs as the game continues to grow. Thanks to the growth in popularity and the advocacy of national football ambassadors, many of whom were part of the country's 2012 World Cup team, there is a growing interest in female football in the Gambia. Elsewhere on the continent, with the support of FIFA's Women's Development Fund, an ambitious campaign to boost female football has been launched by the Council of South African Football Associations. The aim is to support the growth of the game on the continent by changing public perception on female football. The show of public support from FIFA President Infantino is also quite welcoming for female football enthusiasts who have for many years decried the insufficient or lack of support. For now, the female game is on a steady but fast rise. FIFA has also created a Women's Football Development Department, all in a bid to support the growth of female football. One of the regions showing the benefit is the Council of Southern Africa Football Associations, COSAFA region, where they have been developing the next generation of female players and administrators, as well as funding youth tournaments, coaching courses and workshops to showcase emerging talent. In addition, there have been competitions and courses supported by FIFA's Women's Football Development Funding. With more countries now having fully functional national leagues and taking part in international competitions, it is hoped that female football will grow even bigger in the years ahead. Answana Sonyasi for Qtv News.
Before we end this bulletin, let's take a quick look at our main stories. Following the short Christmas break, President Barrow Meet the People tour resumed with stops in Foni. Solo Sandeng daughter told the TRRC the family have still not been able to bury her father following his arrest, torture and killing in 2016. We also heard from UDP supporters about their treatment following their participation in a protest march against the killing of Solo Sandeng. The Republic of Turkey made a significant donation to the Gambia Armed Forces. In international news, we heard how journalists are being killed with impunity around the world in the course of doing their work. In sports news, in an extended special report, we heard why fans of female football in Africa have much to look forward to. That's all we have for you in this bulletin. Do join us at 10 p.m. for another bulletin. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.